On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we kick off Prospect Week with some names of prospects we'll be keeping a close eye on this season.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild. We are your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, and we are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we take a look at some prospects that we'll be keeping a close eye on this season, where we can expect to see them, timetables, and plenty more as we kick off a full week talking Minnesota Wild prospects. My name is Seth Topol, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. As mentioned, Alex Micheletti joining the show for his usual Monday appearance after a Micheletti Friday. So we get a Micheletti sandwich here with quick succession in appearances, and going to take a little bit more of an at-large look, Alex, because a lot of prospects in this Minnesota Wild system. We're going to stay away from the guys, for the most part, that we expect to push for jobs in training camp because, you know, the Riley Heights of the world, the Liam Ogrens of the world, we expect that those guys, Murat Huznadinov, we expect that they're going to be on the roster or at least fighting for potential jobs. But there are some prospects that are a little further away. And so the aim today is to just allow people to learn where they can watch particular players and what we'll be looking for. And I think let's start with the guy who I think is probably going to be under the biggest microscope this season, Charlie Stramel. And look, from being drafted in the first round, which led to a lot of head scratching by Minnesota Wild fans, members of the media, it was a rough season for Charlie, to say the least. He did not play a ton. He battled injuries. He was dropped in the lineup in Wisconsin, and it led to his departure from the University of Wisconsin. He heads to Michigan State. And so it's a fresh start for Charlie this year. But I think the thing that is intriguing most is you look at just how much he's kind of filled out his frame. 6'3", 223 was his official measurements at Wild Development Camp. This is a big season for Charlie to prove the doubters wrong and to put himself back on the path to being like a big impact prospect, the kind that the Minnesota Wild drafted him to be.
Yeah, this is the most ideal landing spot for him to be reunited with his, national development coach in Adam Nightingale, and the hope. I think Charlie and his advisors, they can look at Isaac Howard, who his freshman year he went to Minnesota Duluth, and it was a nightmare freshman season for him, and so he decided to go in the transfer portal and landed at Michigan State and had a great sophomore season. So Stramel can look at that and and hope, because Isaac Howard was teammates with Stramel at the development program. So that's the hope. But yeah, you have to actually show it. And he's gonna be on a talented Michigan State team that made the NCAA tournament last year. So we'll see. I mean, he's gonna have to earn his spot in the lineup and stay healthy too. I think the big thing at Wisconsin, getting hurt derailed his season, and then not not showing his talent, and looks like button heads with Mike Hastings too. So we'll see if getting back in a familiar environment, and he's still going to be in the Big Ten, so with the Wisconsin rival at Michigan State. So those Michigan State Wisconsin games are going to be must watch, and we'll be able to watch a lot of his games because it'll be on the Big Ten Network. So that will be interesting to see where he slots in the lineup. I'm sure he's hoping to be in top 6, but like I said, Michigan State's a really talented team, and when you make the NCAA tournament, a lot of times guys, don't leave, that, they aren't, trying to jump ship from a talented team like that. So we'll see where he fits into the lineup for the Spartans.
Yeah. And you look at his statistics in 2022-2023 at Wisconsin, he had 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 total points, 59 PIMs. And then this past season, he had 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 total points in 34 games with Wisconsin. But as you alluded to, Mike Hastings is pretty widely known as being a more veteran, preferential head coach. And so you take that in, you couple in injuries. And, this has been pointed out to me by a few listeners. And so let's not dismiss this as well. Dude lost his dad at a point in his life when I think a lot of us really value the sort of advice that a dad can give with big decisions looming, with where to finish school, getting drafted by the Minnesota Wild. Those are points in a player's career in which they like to have some of that advice. And so in addition to navigating just the inconsistency of the season, the injuries, the playing time, navigating all of that, I think this truly is, and we'll talk about this more throughout the week. I think this truly is just a 100% full fresh start for Charlie Stramel, and an opportunity for him to prove over not only this year but next year too that he's got some skills that can really make him a worthwhile add to this prospect system.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, when it comes to guys that play college hockey, and especially from that national development program, sometimes, maybe they should go play a year of junior hockey, instead of just going straight in. And that seems to be the case for Stramel. He went straight in right from, his 18 year into college hockey. And in college hockey, you can be playing up against guys 25, 24, 25 years old. So it's you're playing against grown men. And sometimes these young bucks, even if they have more talent and skill than, some of the guys that they're playing against, you can get beat up physically. And some of those guys just need to mature more. And it seems to be the case with Charlie here. I know he had a lot of others, things like you said, with his dad and just other, injuries now. But, this is a put up or shut up year for him, and a clean slate, and brand new teammates for the most part, except for Howard. And so, yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's staying in the conference he knows too, which is good because he knows what to expect. I would, I think Big Ten is, if they're not the best college hockey conference, they're right there, right with the NCHC. So, and we'll, the Wild have some other prospects in that league that we'll talk about. But Stramel's got to get back to, what he's known for is being that power forward and using his body, because he's a unique, athlete out there. Because a lot of hockey players you see are 5'9", 5'10", and he's like a linebacker on skates. If you look at his, he's just a tank. And when you're a bigger guy like that too, skating can always be an issue. So I know he's been working really hard on his initial stride. So, we'll see if the summer work, pays off when the actual games can start. That's a lot of things that we see, development camp, it's great, that they're working on, they look great in the summer. It's the same thing that you can say about, training camp or, like pro days for these college guys. But when you actually strap on the pads and the whistle blows and there's actual, games to be played, that's when you'll be actually judged. So, it's great that he looks good now, but when you're facing that Big Ten competition, when the lights are on, we'll see if that work, does indeed pay off. So
Yeah.
I know we're all rooting for him because he's he's a first round draft pick, and you want those to hit. If you don't hit on your first rounders, it can really hurt. It's a good thing that that they've, in theory, have hit on the second round picks, but you want your first rounders to to be big time players for your organization for for the decade.
And I like that both Stramel and Michigan State are saying, yes, it's great that you're getting a reset.
Yeah,
let's do something with
right.
it. So
right.
I think there's a good understanding from both sides of like, let's turn this into a good opportunity for both of us.
Yeah.
And so,
and I don't think, in knowing Nightingale and the way he coaches, I don't think he's just going to hand Stramel a top line role or a top, second line. He's going to have to, to really earn it. Like I said, for those not familiar with college hockey, Michigan State, before Adam Nightingale was just, they were awful in the Big Ten. And so they needed to make a coaching change. And he was right there, in the state of Michigan, because he was, working for the National Development Program team, which, has the, the best of the best for that age, 18-year-olds, 17 and 18 for U.S., prospects. And so, he came with a big pedigree and got them, back to being a national powerhouse, with alumni like Torrey Krug and Ryan Miller. So, and Duncan Keith. So they've had some big names come through that, and they were really down, and they hired him, and, he's a successful college coach now. And that Michigan State team has a goalie, Trey Augustine, who we saw in the World Championships this past summer, and definitely the best goalie in Big Ten. So he's going to a team that is going to be on national TV a lot, and most likely will be in the NCAA tournament. So that'll be fun, watching, Charlie in some high intense games too, because that will, in theory, get him ready for pro hockey, no doubt.
Yeah, we'll be keeping close eye on how he does, because if he does trend towards a hit, it's just another feather in the cap of Judd Brackett and the rest of the scouting crew. So we'll see there. On the topic of goalies, the Wild have an intriguing player in the pipeline, not named Jesper Wallstedt, that is really catching a lot of people's interest. And so we'll talk about a potential goalie for Iowa coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Game Time. We are right in the middle of the summer. The second half of the Major League Baseball season is underway. There's no better way to spend those wonderful summer days than heading to Target Field and watching the Minnesota Twins continue to stay in the fight in the American League Central. Game Time can help create the ultimate game day experience by helping you to not worry about your tickets in the slightest. Did you know that Game Time is an official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Not only that, but you can check in on great zone deals. You pick a section. Game Time picks the seats, plus their lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets that are cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure to check out Locked On Vikings, because guess what? Minnesota Vikings signed their rookies to deals over the weekend. And so Luke Braun will tell you all about why it's important and where J.J. McCarthy slots in on the quarterback depth chart. He's got things on lock like nobody else covering the Minnesota Vikings. So make sure to check out Locked On Vikings to get your Monday started. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Alex, I teased before the break that there's a goalie in the Minnesota Wild organization that is starting to really draw some intrigue. And we're going to be talking about the full goalie organizational depth chart later this week. But another prospect that we'll be keeping a very keen eye on this year is Samuel Hlavaj. He had a fantastic showing in the World Championships. And we're not talking about Jesper Wallstedt because depending on how the goalie room plays out, if a particular goalie is moved, Phil Gustafsson, that's going to pull Jesper from the prospect pool into the NHL roster, which means who's next? Who is the next player in the system that you're going to have at Iowa that could potentially get a call up if there's an injury on the NHL roster? Before Samuel Hlavaj, there wasn't really a clear-cut answer to that question, but Levi, I thought he looked great at development camp. World Championships, as mentioned, he was fantastic there. I'm telling you, this kid, I think, is a beyond solid acquisition for the Minnesota Wild. And when Jesper makes his full-time trip to the NHL, that's his net in Iowa. That is Levi's net in Iowa. That's his job to lose. And I think he's going to impress some people.
Yeah, the goaltending position, it's so hard to judge when they're 18. And, that's probably why he didn't get drafted right away is, these guys are still growing. They can, be an awkward stage when they're 18, 19. And so some guys, it takes a little bit longer. And when you're on a stage like that and the World Championships, the scouts are all there because, this tournament happens right at the end of the NHL playoffs. It's a weird tournament. Guys can be joining that tournament from the NHL playoffs. They get guys over. Look at, Pasta came over and helped his team win it all, the gold medal. And so, Eli's, he has a personality too, which I love, like Jesper. So having that 1-2 goalie tandem in the future would be awesome. Just a position where, goalies are known to be kind of, awkward or quirky. These guys have a lot of good personality. They asked him at development camp what forwards, what players he thought were pretty good or could could get a goal by him, and he said nobody, which that was absolutely hilarious to see. And then he broke the exercise bike too, so that was he's a physical beast, but that was hilarious. And it's good for him because that Iowa, and Heartlanders goalie depth chart is kind of in flux right now, and
Yeah.
it's a good time to be joining that, because Zane McIntyre, had a really tough past season, and he left the organization. He's not even in the AHL now, so that goes to show you how rough of a past season it was for him. And so there's an opening spot right there. He'll be competing with Troy Grosnek or Jesper or Kyle McClellan. So I mean, there's a bunch of them down there now. I would think he'd be a favorite to be the top dog, there, or number 2 behind Jesper, if that's how things go. we really don't know about that with the goaltending right now. It's kind of so in flux. We'll see if Bill Guerin has another trick up his sleeve for a trade early in training camp. Yeah, I'm intrigued by him. He has the size. It seems like every year goalies get bigger and bigger. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine that at some point, like, all goalies are going to be like 6'8", 6'9". Like, it's like crazy. They're getting to be basketball small forwards in that, and there's not a whole lot of space to shoot at with these goalies and their goalie pad size. I remember that hilarious picture of Andre Vasilevsky when with his pads, and he looked like he had like multiple balloons underneath him. Yeah, it was. It's just crazy when you compare. Some of the biggest goalies in the league to UC Saros, who's 5'9". It's insane that he can compete at a high level with his size. When you look at everybody else, it's a kudos to him and his abilities. But yeah, I'm intrigued by this kid, especially the World Championships. It's not bad competition. It's some really good competition. So it's kudos to the Wild scouting staff again. It's Judd puts that all together, and so Bill Guerin is always crediting the scouting staff for finding guys, and so this could be another hidden gem. So yeah, we'll see.
Elite diamond in the rough.
Yes.
We'll see how it plays out. Now, We'll finish by talking about a couple of defensemen with high pedigrees that I am intrigued to keep an eye on this season. One you could probably expect, another maybe not so much. We'll talk about that to finish today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder for you, it's Prospect Week here at Locked On Wild. We'll be taking a look at organizational depth charts and trying to give you a full picture as to who will be where and when we can expect to see them on the NHL roster. Just giving you a sense of the names that are going to be at particular spots for the Minnesota Wild this year. Alex, let's talk about a couple of other names. I kind of teed it up in a way that I hope people know. at least one of the names that we're going to discuss to finish. But obviously on defense, the Wild's got a good one in Zeev Buium. And so even though it's highly likely that once his Denver season is done, he will join the NHL roster, still going to keep an eye on the Denver Pioneers, not only for him, but also for another name to see if those players can potentially go back to back in their national title defense.
Yeah, Rieger Lorenz. He was awesome in the Frozen Four. He was a key forward for them. Up front there, and it kind of worked out too, because I'm sure, Brad Bombardier was checking in on Rieger all this past season, and Brad being a former Wild defenseman, he got to see Zeev and realized how close he is to being at that NHL level. And, it's so hard to go back to back in college hockey. And so, it's going to be really fun. The NCHC, their games are on national TV a lot too. So it'll be fun to watch not only one Wild prospect, but now two on the same team, and see their chemistry develop. And it'd be really cool at some point to have both of them, hopefully on the Wild roster at the same time. It'd be awesome. And he's getting the best of the best coaching there in college hockey with Dave Carl and Tavis McMillan and Dallas Ferguson. It's a heck of a coaching staff, and like I mentioned earlier in the episode, the NCHC is, for as far as college hockey competition, it's 1-2 right there with the Big Ten. So the Wild have a lot of exciting prospects in college hockey, and I know a lot of fans love college hockey too. So it's really cool that the Wild have picked a lot of guys, as far as trusting college hockey coaches for their development.
Another name in addition to those two, because obviously we're going to keep an eye on Buium because he was just drafted by the Minnesota Wild. One that I'm intrigued to keep an eye on here this year is Jack Peart, who has been with St. Cloud State over the last couple of seasons. Really has developed into a guy I think that could fly under the radar in this Minnesota Wild prospect system, because you've got the likes of Carson Lambos, Kyle Masters, David Spacek, Ryan O'Rourke, Damon Hunt. A lot of these guys were hoping for bounce back seasons from in 2024, 2025. And it just really feels like Peart is a quick study and a fast riser that could make the most of, rising to the top of those Iowa Wild defensive prospects, and could potentially, before it's all said and done, be one of the names that gets a look, maybe not this year, but definitely next year, to factor somewhere into the defensive equation.
Yeah, he's a really puck-moving defenseman. He can play the power play, so that's when you can, quarterback a power play unit. Teams are always looking for that, especially with the Wild, and I just. This kid, I've watched him since he was in high school at Grand Rapids, and he's always been the star of his team. And at St. Cloud, same thing on the back end. He was extremely fun to watch. He can really shoot the puck. He can move it, and he didn't make a ton of mistakes at St. Cloud State, and he was playing against, like I've mentioned, some of the best competition in that NCHC conference. You're playing, he played Zeev Buium this past season. He played Denver, North Dakota. It's just a gauntlet of a schedule, and he's gonna give himself a really good chance at eventually making the Wild roster. He's gonna have to cook in Iowa, but he's coming in to a group that really struggled, and so if he can make a name for himself, he can push himself to the top of that depth chart, past Lambos, Hunt, O'Rourke, so, I know they're going to have a new D coach down there too. So, we'll see if that helps improve things. And I'm right there with you. He's a guy that's gonna, I think, really shine for that team, and they need the help. So I'm glad that he decided to sign instead of going back for another year at St. Cloud, because he definitely, he had that option too. But he said he thought he was ready for for pro hockey, and I think that was a good choice for him.
Now, there obviously are plenty of prospects throughout the Minnesota Wild system. These are just a few off the top to keep an eye on this year. And so today's listener question: which Minnesota Wild prospect are you going to keep closest tabs on this season? I know for Trav, who follows Denver hockey every minute, he's going to be keeping an eye on Zeev and probably Rieger, Lorenz as well. Which prospect are you keeping a close eye on here this season? Leave it in the comments, and our best answer will lead off tomorrow's show. Alex, I wanted to finish with something that you brought to my attention here before we were recording. The NHL team travel distance in miles for every team in the NHL, whether you are the Dallas Stars, who have 56,700 miles of travel this season, or the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have 31,700 miles of travel. It should be no surprise to anyone that the Minnesota Wild are literally the middle, dead middle, with 42,200 miles traveled to travel this upcoming season. Middle of the standings, middle of you name it, middle of team travel distance. Not surprised at all.
It's the Wild for forever. You can put it on the Wild tombstone if the team ever folds. Hopefully not a second time in this state. But it's gonna be interesting. When I saw Dallas up there, I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. But the West teams always have to travel more than the East, so that makes sense why Dallas is up there at the top. But some of these teams are going to have some grueling stretches of travel. The Wild have a lot of road games early too, so a lot of time to bond on the road there. But it's gonna be intriguing to watch that and keep those stats in mind and see where the teams end up in the standings based on their travel for sure.
Time will tell. We'll probably dive into the schedule before the season starts, because there's some interesting things that happened with the schedule too. And so like we keep saying, there's no shortage of things to talk about. It's just a matter of when. And so hopefully everybody enjoyed this dip of the toe into Prospect Week this week, because we've got a lot of good things planned for you, as well as a couple of crossovers coming up later in the week as well. You can watch all of it if you subscribe to Locked On Wild on YouTube or listen on your favorite audio platforms. Make sure you hit the like button when you watch, so that that can help us with our reach, getting to more Wild fans, and continuing to climb the charts on the YouTube side, to say the least. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday right here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll catch you for the next episode of Locked On Wild coming up tomorrow.